Hey, it's Julesy, and I am back posting a video from the SBG Book Club. We are now into the second year of my book club, and this is one of my favorite author chats that we have been able to produce in the almost 2 years that the book club has existed. Part of why this interview with Kiese Laymon is my favorite is not only because of the content, but also because like the technical difficulties don't exist. Like, have the technical aspect down pat, the audio, the visual, the content, it's all hitting in this author chat. Also, Dr. Patricia Hill Collins is probably our best, but there were some technical sound difficulties with that video. This one is just through, hands down, one of our overall better done author chats. And I think this interview is so important to reach a broader audience because of the style of writing that Kiese Laymon does, and Heavy being one of my favorite books. I have given this book to every Black man in my life. Friends, partners, siblings have all been given this book to read, and really so many of my homeboys have read this book and then decided that it was the time for them to go into therapy. It's really been eye-opening for them, and I think this is just such an accessible read that both Kiese's style of writing is very welcoming. He also, the audio book version of this is narrated by Kiese, and it's literally like you're having a conversation with one of your homeboys. It's just a rare, intimate, and vulnerable insight into the life of a Black man in America. And I know that the conversation around dating and Black men and Black women and Black love and how we engage with each other and how we interact with each other is never going to go away. It is always going to be a conversation that people are deeply invested and interested in having, because that interaction is a large chunk of our lives. And what I really appreciate about Heavy is, and the subsequent interview that I had with Kiese, was, where do Black men really have the room to invest in their redemption arc, in their journey towards growth? How do they have the ability to eschew the way that like white supremacy shows up in our relationships, the way that patriarchy has no gender, and we all have the ability to perpetuate patriarchal stances towards each other? Where can Black men be vulnerable and tender with each other and not be shunned or ridiculed for it? And I am absolutely someone that sometimes peddles in the bar is so low for men. Yeah, it is. But this interview with Kiese really kind of broadens my scope on understanding what my request of work that I am asking for in Black men, and how are we participating, reinvest in sort of this patriarchal traumatic experience. If after this interview, well, you are so inclined to pick up this book, please use my links. They'll be inserted in the video and down below in the description box. They help support the book club. Also, if you decide to do the audiobook version, if you never used Audible before, definitely use my Audible links. This is not sponsored, but those links will be down below in the description box. All this sort of supporting us, buying the shirt, grabbing our new candle line. Okay, we do have a candle line. This is our Togetherness candle, which is for the motto of the book club, for the Black girls in the forgotten spaces, and it smells, ooh, they really do smell divine. Damn, I'm about to light this up now. Okay. Any way you could support the book club is very much appreciated, and always joining, becoming an insider, come on over and engage with us in the SBG Book Club. We would absolutely love to have you. All the links will be down below in the description box. And I really hope that you enjoy this interview with Kiese Laymon about his book, Heavy. Oh, hi y'all. Welcome to the next SBG author chat. I'm excited to have you here. Excited to have our next author here, Kiese Laymon, who I always want to add extra syllables to your last name. I always want to say.
How you gonna do that with two? What you gonna do?
Lamone. I don't know. In my mind, it always sounds like I'm always thinking, oh, there's something different. But we know everyone is, ready to go to the Brandy versus Monica versus. Yeah. So we are going to get on it. We are going to do it here. You can watch us on Twitter, on YouTube, or on Facebook. SBG is all about making everything accessible. So thank y'all for joining us. And
We are doing an author chat for Heavy. Ooh, can you see it? An American memoir. This was our August read. We are reading this in companion with All About Love by Bell Hooks. So we definitely we had a very emotional August. We had a very deep reading, and we encouraged all the men folk to join. I don't know how successful. Most of our audience is women and femme presenting, so I don't know how many men actually got to join in. We had a handful, but we were definitely trying to encourage the men folk to get some lessons, because we produce reading guides for all the books. So Bree Reed did the syllabus for Heavy this month, and she's really all about care and compassion and community. So she had a lot of hard-hitting exploratory questions. She pulled all the right quotes from your book too, but your book just, you really, really came through. And my favorite part was Black Abundance. So I am very excited to have you here. Thank
I'm
you.
so happy to be here. Thank you. And I just want to thank everybody who took part in it. The whole what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Yeah, we've been reading for about 4 or 5 weeks, yeah.
And that syllabus is just, I'm just thankful. So I'm thankful to be here with you.
That is all Bree. She did a really, really, really good job. I'm gonna pull the questions up on my phone, which I thought I did, but I did not. And we're going to get right into it. So we got a ton of questions. Of course, what we do, we always filled all our questions prior to the author chat from our community of readers. And everyone definitely was worried about you. We got a lot of questions about where you're at, how you're doing. There is a lot of, so we could just start with that. How are you doing?
I mean, I think I'm doing all right. I'm doing better than I've been doing. I think we are not doing well. I think I'm doing all right. I don't know how well you can do if the we is not doing well, but
collective is not doing well.
Yeah, the we is not doing well, but I'm better than I was when I wrote that book, for sure.
Okay, that was like the primary question. It's like,
right.
Where's he at now?
Right.
Because it definitely left a lot of us concerned. So we're just going to jump right into the first question here. I'm going to pull it up on the screen.
Damn, that sun coming in. Is that bad?
No, you're fine. I'll let you know if you need to fix anything. It's giving you like, what is it, the golden hour glow? What all the kids talk about?
Yeah.
On TikTok, it's the golden hour glow. You're supposed to turn your face towards it. All right. How was your experience writing Heavy different from your writing journey with Long Division and How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, which are your two prior books?
I was trying to write Heavy when I wrote both of those books, but I just didn't have it in me. I didn't have the skill. I didn't have the will. I didn't have the vision or the architecture. I didn't, I knew I wanted to talk to my mama, but I didn't know I wanted to directly address her. So once I figured out that's what I really wanted to do in Heavy, it became a lot harder. The writing became harder. The living became harder. The conversations with my mama became harder. But those first two books were hard, but they weren't. They were easy compared to Heavy.
Okay, so in the beginning, is this the right question? Okay, yeah. In the beginning of the book, you expressed that you wanted to write a lie. Well, in the beginning and the closing. However, you beautifully told an honest Black experience that felt very familiar. At any point during the process of writing, did you find yourself starting to veer from writing the truth in its rawness and have to course correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because like I know some, I mean, I just think my understanding of the truth and honesty are two different things. And I think we can like write toward honesty or live toward honesty, but you're going to fail. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, there are a lot of times that I thought I was like, when you out there and you at the club or whatever, you think you doing some shit, and then somebody got to tap you on the shoulder and be like, we was doing that 3 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So there were definitely times in Heavy I thought I was doing the work and I wasn't, like one of them is just like, part of that book was like, I was trying to write that book to sort of explore and reckon with what I thought was like the only fucked up romantic relationship I had in my life. And then what I wrote about that relationship, I actually took out of the book, but
is that person still in the book?
Excuse me?
Is that person still in the book?
No. The relationship I was writing about is like, it's subtext, but it's not in the book directly at all. I took that whole section out because I had to, but I fooled myself into believing that like that was the only fucked up relationship I had. You know what I mean? Like I thought I was doing the work, and then you start to like realize that there's patterns, and the only consistent in all your relationships is you. So No, I mean, I realized every day that I was lying.
Mm.
Every day. I think that's all people, though. You know what I'm saying?
All people, I don't know that. I think I'm a very honest person. So much so that I'm wondering, what does it mean when you say truth and honesty are two different things?
Well, because I think I mean, like right now, we were to both write about our experience with this. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna write something that's gonna be truthful. Let's say I try to write something that's truthful. I don't know what the truth is, right? I'm not sure what the truth is. And more importantly, I think if I wrote something about this interaction an hour from now versus right now, it's gonna be two different renderings. So I'm trying to say I don't really know what the truth necessarily is. I know when I'm lying. So I'm just trying often in my work to like push toward honesty because I think truth is elusive. I think truth changes often. But more importantly, most importantly, I think we know when we're trying to deceive ourselves. We know when we're deceiving people. Um, I do at least.
That's some very deep self-reflection.
That shit's not deep. What you talking about? That ain't deep.
I think a lot. No, because we're reading all about love, and so chapter 3 is
Oh,
about honesty, right? And
yeah,
she makes this claim that men, in particular, are emotional terrorists, and their largest weapon in their arsenal is lying.
right.
And there's not really a lot in society that really helps anybody in general to stop their lying. And I've
I
definitely
love that
dealt with
book.
liars, right? So yeah.
You know the thing, I love that book. When I got kicked out of school and I went to Oberlin, the first weekend I got there, I was so hyped because Bell Hooks was there, and she was in the bookstore giving a reading and a conversation, and I was hyped. You know what I'm saying? I read all her shit coming
Yeah.
up. And fam, tell me why she sat there, she was doing bell hooks, and then she was like, she started talking about capitalism, and she does this thing where she can like critique a system and kind of critique herself for like being implicated in the system, but
Mm-hmm.
sort of slip out of it. So she starts talking about capitalism, and then she started talking about her fucking convertible that was down there. She had a convertible BMW, and then she started talking about this young white man she was fucking, and I was just like, it made me love bell hooks even more because I had never
Yeah.
seen I was
Cause
used to
she
Cornell,
honest. Yeah.
you know, yeah.
We've been trying to get her in the book club. If we can swindle it, that would be major. But no, but she talks about this honesty thing and about how a lot of people don't have a way to dive. So for you to understand that it's not so much about always being truthful, but to acknowledge when you're trying to deceive someone and just be honest in that moment about it. Like a lot of people can't be honest with themselves. I think a lot of people struggle with being men in particular, black men struggle with being honest with themselves.
Yeah, I'm not the defender of black men. But I think we struggle in being honest with ourselves in relationship to women. I'm talking about cis heterosexual men. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the thing about the Bell Hooks quote is like if you shift the optic, like you could say what she said about black men about parents, right?
And
Like if
that's
you
what she
shift
does. Yeah. Yeah.
right. You know what I'm saying? You shift the optics. So like I think we are fucking terrorists, as she says, despicable. We lie to ourselves, particularly we lie to fucking like black women over and over again. But I think the hardest part is like at least black women in my life do the same shit. They just don't do it to us. They might do it to a child. They might do it
Yeah.
to a friend. You know what I
And we
mean?
do it
Like
to
that's
each other. Yeah.
and definitely do it to each other. I think that's where it gets kind of complicated for me.
Okay. I'm going to move into the next question because I could veer off on this all day long. How many books do you have unpublished or half written stashed away?
Um, I got 4 books coming out in the next 2 years. I guess that's stashed away. I got two children's
Four.
books and
Okay.
and 2 adult books. Yeah, I got 4.
Mm-hmm. Um, so we got a ton of questions, obviously, about your mom's response. We were trying to find the article. I know there's a article that exists in the ether where you do have an essay about your mom's response to the book. But one of the
Yeah.
biggest questions we had was, what parts of the book did your mother suggest you change?
Oh wow. Well, some of the stuff she told me to take out is just not in the book, so I took it out. She really wanted me to take out the part in the beginning when we're at the grocery store and we see her
Picture.
a Xerox of her check and her license because she's been bouncing checks. She really wanted me to take that out, and I didn't take it out because to me, um, that scene is about what happens right after that, which is like I put my hand under the fold in her knee the way she did me. I drove her home. We fall asleep in the car. To me, it was about getting to that, but for her, she was like, I can't get to that because I don't want people to view me as someone who was economically uh,
Distressed.
irresponsible, distressed. That's what I say. Like she says irresponsible, I say distressed. But anyway, she wanted me to take that out, and I kept it in. I mean, my mama had her way. The book wouldn't have been written, but that was a scene particularly that um, she really wanted me to take out. There were some other scenes that I wrote about her partner abusing her, and I had to take those out. And then um, I tried to hurt him, and we had to take that out. So there are a lot of things she wanted me to take out. I took out, but something I didn't take out was that scene in the grocery store.
So, going into the relationship with your mother, how did you go about initiating these hard conversations? Because it feels like in the Black community, any sort of sticking up for yourself is seen as disrespect.
Sticking up for yourself is seen as disrespect.
Yeah, especially to your parents, especially to your elders.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, my mama, it's just you got to pick your poison. You know what I'm saying? Like she created a black artist, and for better and worse. And so, when you create a black artist and you really give this black artist, this young black artist, all these books that you tell them not to read or read, and you surround me with like, radicals and all that kind of shit from everywhere in the globe, I think I'm gonna do some things that she's not gonna want me to do. Um, and and then when you add that precarity that she was a young mom, and she was beating my ass and stealing my money. Like, I'm an artist, I'm gonna write about that.
I think a lot of folks struggled, especially because we have a lot of single mothers and just mothers in the book club in general. And a lot of folks struggled with their perception of where to land with your mom. Because you were so honest about it, right? And I think a lot of us felt that experience. We've had similar experience with our parents. And and then we're reading All About Love, and Bell Hooks again in the chapter 2 of Justice says that essentially if you got beat or your parents lied to you or your parents passed on trauma, all these things in which are typical Black experiences, that's not love.
Right. I agree.
And so
I mean,
I
but
think
I don't think we need to disqualify them for failing at for failing at that thing that they weren't prepared to do well. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I wrote that book because I wanted to understand. Like, I love my mama still more than anything in the world, more than myself. Blah blah blah. But part of understanding myself, or like not getting lost in myself, was like I needed to understand how someone who could love me and literally bash me in the fucking head with a shoe and or steal my money. And it's not about like demonizing her. It's about for me, it was about finding the road to how, and also seeing the way that like I knowingly and unknowingly walked in those same steps. But it's hard to be a parent. I'm not a parent, but my mama.
I think it definitely also, I had to, when we were having this discourse, it's like you have to remember that this is like the early 90s, right? And it does also make you think about how much language has evolved.
Right.
Because sometimes I felt like, or you were in certain circumstances because the words weren't there to express, and now we have that language, or we're starting to have that language. And how much, even, I'm always talking about like how casual trauma as Black women comes into our lives. And that like the power of language has really helped a lot of us to better understand the ways in which we've been put in unsafe circumstances, and to be able to better create community amongst ourselves. So,
but the hard part is like sometimes we use the language as the shield. Do you know what I mean? Like the hard part is like knowing the language can be the shield. And so I'm agreeing with you. Like my mama and I can talk about sex. We can use the word sex. We can use the word abuse. We can use the words addiction. We could never use them before. But what we have to make sure is that we don't, and we use trauma. We have to make sure we don't. I'm talking about my mama and me. We got to make sure we don't use trauma and addiction and shit to like front like we doing the work. Because I think, we see white folks do that all the time.
I mean, so I May Destroy You. I don't know if you've seen the show I May Destroy You on HBO.
Yes.
Right? So she does that, right? The main character, Arabella, she gets all this language around rape and sexual assault and then weaponizes it and isn't really doing the work to like create the safe communities that she would want for herself. Right? And so I think you're like, that's when I think of trauma now. Everything is I May Destroy You. All right. So the next question is, how are you currently practicing vulnerability?
Oh, like currently, I'm literally talking on the phone to you about like my life. I don't know you. You know what I'm saying? Like, shit. That's like right now. I'm practicing by talking to somebody who's very inquisitive and sharp about my fucking insides. That's what I'm
You
doing.
know, in my next lifetime, I'm gonna come back and be a therapist. In this lifetime, I'm trying to be a historian. So,
Oh, I think they're similar though. Actually,
do you think so?
yeah. People don't think they are, but I think good ones. I think good historians have to understand psychologies and yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I, but I could be wrong. I don't know shit. You know.
So these are all. We're gonna get into like a series of personal questions. So you know.
Okay.
Did you ever attend therapy? And if you did, before or after writing the book?
The two times I went to therapy are in the book. When I went, when my mom took me, it really was her friend who was doing like a practicum or something when I was a kid. And then I went with my partner when I was at Vassar for couples therapy. We went one day, never came back. So I'm having my first real therapy session next, no, not next week, but the week after next. But I haven't, no, I've never been
Yeah,
to therapy.
I definitely like closed the book and was like, my man needs therapy. I was like, damn, I hope he took that advance and he got him. But you know what? I'm friends with Jesus, right? I don't want to put this nigga personal business out there, but one of the things we've talked about is becoming like celebrity and how hard it is to get a therapist. Like you think you get more access and money and visibility and like things like that wealthy white people have access to will suddenly become more accessible to you. But he says particularly that like, you know, it's really a struggle to find a therapist as a black man with so much visibility who can take care of help him through the things he has going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to compare my visibility to that at all, but it's tough, especially if you're trying to get a therapist down here where it's just everybody, you know, it's such a small
Church,
community. Yeah,
religious.
church, it's church. Really, the whole state is like church in a lot of ways. So that's real. But you know what? I can't let none of that shit. Like I need it, and I was talking to my mom about it the other day. Nobody in our family has ever done it, and so I told the whole family that I was gonna, you know, pay for us all to do it. So we doing it
Oh,
the
that's
week after,
great.
the week after next. Yeah.
Are y'all doing it together? I'm asking
I
mad
wish we
personal
were doing it
questions.
together. That was what I wanted to do. Them niggas is not gonna be. My family, but shit, them black women are not about to be up in
I
front
want
of
my mom to
everybody
do
else having
therapy
their
with
business out
me.
there.
I asked
Mm.
my mom to do therapy with me, and she's always thinking I'm saying she a bad mom, and I'm like, nah, but let's talk about some things. Let's just talk. Come on, let's talk about
I
some things,
know.
Richard.
It's like, but you know what? It's like, I don't know, being a bad parent, like people don't wanna people run away from that shit, but like how I mean, how can you be a great parent? You have to fail. You know what I'm saying? So I think most parents are shit. As a professor, as a teacher, most parents ain't shit.
I don't
Most
know.
parents out there trying hard as they can. But where's the model, fam? Like where's the fucking
Especially for
liberatory
black
model?
folks, yeah.
For,
And
especially for white folks. Them
we've been told in
motherfuckers
this
are the
lie the
worst.
nuclear family, yeah. And it's
Yeah,
really community that we need.
word. That's what I
Oh,
think.
here goes my mom in the comments talking about when did you ask me to do therapy? She read the book. She loved it. Um, okay, so the next question
Thank
is
you.
oftentimes when people share vulnerable and intimate details of their life, and the person saying with them that they apologize for it being heavy. And this person usually tells them it's heavy because you are trying to carry it alone. After revealing so many truths and unburdening the lies you have held for years, do you feel less heavy? And what steps are you taking to make sure that you aren't picking back up the weight of lies again?
That's a great question. But you know what? I was trying to invert it in my book. Like I wanted to feel heavier. Like in the beginning where I'm saying like the lines like I will, I will, I will. And at the end it's like we will. Like the whole point was I wanted my mom and I and you and you know your mama and everybody to like kind of not kumbaya, but to like work through this shit together. So I wanted to feel heavier. I wanted to not invest in deception and lies as much. I wanted not to be lied to by my mama and the nation, but I feel heavier and I think I'm a better person. But I be wanting to lie every fucking minute of the day. You know what I mean? Like to myself for sure. Um, and definitely like sometimes the people I love, like for all kind of reasons. Like it's not, I don't know. I hear you saying you're an honest person. I just think it's very hard for a lot of people in this country to be honest, and I'm definitely better at it. But it's work every day.
Yeah, I think I'm learning that I might not be the norm, because I don't necessarily understand the energy in investing and lying.
Right.
But I also have a very strong like kind of center of self where I really, as much as it's like, not to say that I don't care about what people think of me, but it's just like at the point where like you don't like me, isn't that kind of just your loss? So to me, like a lot of the ways in which I could possibly lie just always seems like I just don't have the energy to maintain the lie. So why don't I just, you know,
So
tell
how do
tell
you
the
deal
truth?
with hurting people's feelings when people ask you, people who love you ask you, they want an honest, well, they say they want an honest answer, and you know that honest answer will hurt them, be it, mundane or big. You're saying you just tell them the truth regardless if it's
Well, you
gonna
tell
hurt.
them the truth with grace. You
Uh-huh.
say, okay, so I hear what you're asking me, and I want to be you just tell them what, like, I want to be thoughtful, and I really don't want to offend you, and I want to make sure that is this what you're actually asking? So I'll repeat the question to them, and sometimes they'll be like, I don't have the answer.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, I don't know. Or sometimes it is you just go through the heat of like, look, I'm going to tell you this and I don't need a response, and I'm telling you
Right.
this like from a really loving, and I'm also a person that's deeply invested in kindness. There's no way to be truthful and not be and get away with it and have it be a benefit to you and not be invested in kindness.
Yes.
So I just, like I went through a whole breakup and I be telling that nigga he ain't shit all different types of ways. But I do it very, I do it very poetically, right? So like, but it's like, I had a tenuous relationship with my sister, and at some point it's just like I had to think about what I was saying, think about who am I saying it to, what life are they actually living,
Right.
acknowledging the difference, and then saying I don't need a response, and I'm okay with the fact that we might like something. Sometimes negativity does come from it, but the
Yeah.
negativity that comes out from the negativity from honesty is way different from the negativity that comes from lying.
Yep.
Because I ain't
Definitely.
got to make up for shit, right? Like,
Right.
when you upset, it's like you take your time, you get over it, and we come back together. And I can apologize for it hurting your feelings and say that I love you, and then we go on. Because I didn't lie to you in the first. Look, trying to make up for a lie is like, that's so much
Right.
energy. It's
But
just,
you know what? Like that's why I think historians and like what you just did is you're like gracefully going to the source, and what I hear you saying is you're unafraid of the source of who you are, or whom other people are. And I think historians at their best are kind of always in the archives going to the source, or like doing ethnographies to go to the source. I think a lot of us are afraid of the source, though. I think we're afraid of who we are, afraid of who the people we say we love are.
but why
Um,
be afraid of who you are? Especially now that you've written how about say American? Now that you've written Heavy, right, and you get this great reception from this level of honesty and vulnerability that most Black men never in their lifetimes can even acknowledge within themselves. So at that point, don't you see like the positivity that comes from like living in your truth?
Yeah, fam. But what I'm saying is like I'm not lucky enough to just be isolated in the world. Like I got like
But
like for
isolated.
example, let's say that I learned a lot from what you just said, and now I'm like, yo, I'm really a liberatory ass nigga. Like I got relationships with people, and all those relationships with people collect like they create a web or a collective we. And I'm saying the collective we cannot be like that strong if like parts of the we aren't. So yes, like I think I've done some work, but I'm not gonna be like I've delivered. But like my relationships with different people on Earth, I've done very little work with them. You know what I'm saying? So like I'm not where I need to be, but
Uh-huh.
I'm partially not where I need to be because some of the relationships I have aren't where they need to be. And but like my point is like that is the work. You know what I'm saying?
But
I
that work
wish
takes the honesty, right? So like,
absolutely, absolutely. But I just think it also takes reciprocity, and I think relationships where reciprocity exists are very few. They're just rare in my life. In my life. And what I'm trying to say in the book is beyond just interpersonal. Like if you and I were friends, let's talk about our relationship, our friendship, but also like we got relationships to the nation that are just decayed and atrophied. So I'm really suspect of people who actually think that they got this shit figured out while being Americans and or quote unquote citizens, because that relationship in and of itself is
is a
is
lie.
it's a lie, fam. It's
Yeah,
a fucking
it's a whole
lie.
lot.
But
I
you
mean,
know,
nobody can really say that they have it all figured out. But when you think about how fraught the world is, especially I'm a Black woman, and so I'm very aware of the amount of trauma that I can comes at me no matter who I am. So
right.
why would I then put that energy into lying to the people that I love if
Well, let
the
me ask you
world is
this:
gonna lie to me, right?
Why do
Doesn't
you
it
think why
behoove
do you
me?
think people do it?
What, people lie?
Well,
Oh,
yeah, you said why would you do it? And I think that's a great question. I think the other question is like why do you think most of us lie?
oh, because what you said earlier, I think people are scared of themselves. People are scared of who they really are,
Yeah.
and I think it's not even a scared of who they really are. It's just they have a fear that they will not ever really be loved for who they are.
Yeah.
And so it's like an inferred bias, right? It's this idea that somehow if I become who I really am, everyone's gonna like I'm gonna lose all these relationships I've cultivated. And what does happen is true. Emotional maturity does knock off a lot of relationships. A lot of relationships no longer become valuable to you
Woo.
the more mature you become. But
Right.
what it does mean is that the relationships that you do cultivate become much more meaningful.
I
Because
feel
being a
that.
liar is way more lonely than being an honest person. Because you don't
I
even know
feel,
yourself at that point. You
I
just got
just
a
feel
lot of
like being,
surface ass relationships.
I love what you're saying. I just think being an American is being a liar, and I don't know. I
I'm
don't
trying to
know.
fight for all the niggas out there that got a problem with lying. Like, just come on over to the honest side. I get like
Come
we. I mean, I'm
on.
still an American, right? And I'm very aware of being American, and I'm very aware of the lie that this nation is built upon. But that lie doesn't have to. It's like that Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin thing. Like that lie doesn't have to be the
Right.
lie that I build my home on. That doesn't have to be the
Absolutely.
lie that I build my
Absolutely.
family on.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm doing in this conversation, I'm doing what I normally don't do. Like what I'm trying to do is understand people who, because like at my worst, I'm not lying just to protect nobody. At my
Mm-hmm.
worst, I'm lying because I want all the options and I want to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that sort of greed and that sort of like cowardice is very commonplace. But I agree with you 100%. It shouldn't be. I mean, I wrote that book to help it not be. But I just think it's fucking hard. And I think you're saying it's hard, but do it, nigga. So I feel you.
Yeah, because I mean, it's worth it. And
Def-
I think there are more black women who do that because it's like, how do we, when we really, women and queer folk, right? And not to say that we haven't hit that critical mass, right? But when you think about how do I actually create a world of care and compassion that largely when I walk into society, I do not get, it can't be built on me in subsuming the same lie that America tells me.
it can be, fam, but like, do you really think most black women don't do that with each other
I
and
think
their children?
I think my approach is radical, but I think I think the
I
black
feel you.
feminist, the political is personal, right? And I have a question
Right.
further down. I do think it is, um, it's not that I'm honest about everything. There's sometimes I lie via omission. Sometimes I don't. I don't entertain a lot of conversations. I don't put
Right.
myself. I'm not going to claim that like victim blame or whatever, but I do avoid, and I have the privilege of avoiding a lot of situations, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it just it's not that there's not this 100% honesty. There's not this
Right.
purity, right, that you're trying to reach. We are complicated. The world is complicated. People are
Yeah.
complicated. But it is that I for the most part I don't lie because it's not worth my energy.
Yeah. And what I'm doing is you putting a radical possibility in my face, and I'm like, I don't want to look at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, that shit too. Right. Yes. Yes. You right. I think you definitely right. Right.
All
Right.
right.
Everything you can't, how do you argue with anything you just said? You're right. You're right.
All right. So we want to know, how have you been managing um oh, well, this is on honesty. Heavy really dares the reader to be honest with ourselves and those in our lives. With such a vulnerable memoir that exposes a lot about you in the intimate details of your life, were there consequences to having that honest and vulnerability displayed to such a wide audience? How did you manage through the consequences and practice self care during the book tour, interviews, and just daily life?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I should have been in therapy long before I wrote the book or while I was writing it. But, I'm my mama's child. I'm a child of Mississippi, and I'm hard headed. I thought writing was the therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go on tour, and all these people feel like they have an intimate relationship with you, and it's just transactional too because of like the capitalism. Like I'm from Mississippi. We feel often like if people invest in us, we kind of feel sometimes like they have a right to every part of us. And that's how I felt when I was on book tour. I was like, oh, these people bought my book or they gave me attention so they can poke and they can pry. Also, I'm a big boy, and like people would like touch my body in ways that I didn't like, but I didn't I didn't want to scare them away, but also I just was like, oh, okay, they bought my book, they can touch me. It wasn't a healthy time, fam. It wasn't a healthy time. But I'm
Yeah.
but I'm thankful though. I'm real thankful, but it wasn't a healthy time.
Have any of the unnamed white people in the book, like the student who sent racist letters after you wrote the article for your school paper, reached out to you?
Any of the white folk, yeah. Some of those white people reached out. Some people reached out and apologized. I told you I was watching on another episode. And I was talking about my first girlfriend and her family. They threatened to sue, but they didn't have a case because
Abby Claremont, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to protect them, and they just didn't want any of their business out there. And I was like, you don't get to do what you did to me, to my mama, to some other people, and think whatever. But nah, yeah, some white folks have reached out, and like teachers and stuff. Teachers for the most part have reached out and just said they wish that we could do a do-over.
How does that make you feel?
I mean, I'm a teacher, so like that's what I'm trying to say in that book, fam. It's hard to be like, it's just hard to be a good fucking teacher, and it made me feel like I was thankful. I wish that they would have brought that to our relationship. When we had a relationship, but as a teacher who gives a who gives a fuck about what we do, I understand. But most teachers don't want to sit in that failure of how they fucking perpetually fail themselves and students. And I don't want to swim in it and drown in it, but I think you got to acknowledge it if you don't want to do it again, And I think that's what they were trying to do when they reached out.
So how has the memoir affected your personal life in meeting new people and re-engaging with people whom you may have lost contact with?
That sounds like a real sweet, shady question. It sounds like you talk about
These are not my questions. This is not my question. So.
I feel you. I mean, my partner in college, I called her Nzola in the book. We've been tight since the book came out.
That was one of the follow-up questions. Did you reconnect with Nzola?
Yeah. I mean, we were together throughout. We not together like romantically, but we were friends throughout. And she moved like when I was in New York. There's another version of Heavy that's a lot bigger, but I had to take a lot of that shit out. Like when I went to New York to go to teach at Vassar, she went to New York to start like this Black woman's boutique in Manhattan. And she got involved in a relationship with a really famous family, and that didn't work out so well. But so we were always in conversation about stuff. But when the book came out, we had conversations that real conversations we should have had about all kind of stuff, about deception, about various kinds of abuse, about queer antagonism. It was like the HIV epidemic was not just starting, but like we were just starting to realize that supposed like cis like heterosexual people could get it. And so some of the stuff that we all felt, my mama felt, I felt, she felt, we talked a lot about that and how bizarre it was. Some of the stuff that we felt. My mama, when I worked at the Grace House and my girlfriend, they were just like, I mean, I'm laughing because it's fucked up. They were like, don't, you can't come in the house. They were treating that shit like coronavirus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I literally was in such a bad place in my life. Like I thought every day I went to work that I was going to get HIV. And I kind of was at that point in my life. I was fucked up. I was hoping I would, but that's partially because I didn't understand the disease and, everything. So anyway, we talked a lot about stuff like that. But Nzola's she's a complicated, wonderful, wonderful woman and artist.
Yes, one of our favorite characters in the book. So someone wanted to know, did you feel the need to change the name of the characters?
Yes. Well, I mean, I talked to everybody involved in that book for the most part while I was writing it, and most of the people I would talk to wanted their names in the book, but the lawyers for Scribner did not want to be sued if those people changed their minds. So we had to change almost all the names.
Okay. In your opinion, so now we're going to get into some of the men in the book. In your opinion, was the absence of your father the primary motivator for your womanist-leaning viewpoints, or were there other factors at play?
Damn, that's a great question, fam. I never had that. Honestly, probably. I don't know. I mean, if I grew up with my dad, this is not to demonize him. I just think, I mean, my whole trajectory changes. I think I think my desire to discover academically would have changed in a lot of ways. My father's a very rigid person. Doesn't mean I would have been rigid. But I think his rigidity and my mother's rigidity and like profit motive would have encouraged me to do some other shit that like I could necessarily make money off of instead of like doing art, which you just shot in the dark. So yeah, I think if my father would have been there, I don't know that I would have been exploring feminist theory or gender theory at all.
How is your relationship with food and your body today?
Oh shit.
We got we had a ton of questions about food and
like I want to
body
lie about
dysmorphia.
that question. Like I want the answer to that question to be, you know what? It's a lot better. It's a lot better than it was, to tell you the truth. That's what I want to say. And that's the truth, but it's fucked up. My nigga, like, you told me when we first got on, I need to lean back. I'm like, but if I lean back, these niggas gonna see how fat I am. So let me bring my head up in this mode. You know what I'm saying? So it's a work in progress, and it's fucked up.
So that's so high pitched that really hurt to say.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you cap my honesty. I'm honest. I'm gonna be honest with cap my honesty. It's my relationship with food is not fucked up. My relationship with weight is fucked up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't gorge. I don't throw up. I don't starve myself anymore. But that mirror is a monster, man. That mirror is a monster. I don't give a fuck how fine you are, or how fat you are, how skinny you are. That mirror is a monster.
I got a very expensive mirror, and it's playing with my body dysmorphia. So
it's real, right?
Yes. Eating disorders and body dysmorphia are often considered a white woman's problem. Heavy really challenges the notion that mental crisis and trauma can be exhibited in Black people in the form of disordered eating and body dysmorphia. So how does fat phobia and anti-Blackness work together against Black people getting the care they deserve and need?
I mean, they work together fucking brilliantly. Like they work together like, yeah. I mean, and it's just like whenever I write, it's like no matter what I wrote in that book, I meet people who still want to think that book is about how Black people shouldn't eat fucking soul food. I'm like, nigga, that's a Boondocks episode. Like that is not the book that I wrote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not at all.
But I think it's tied to everything else we talk about like, if some of us are like, are, I guess, lucky enough to have language, we need to start talking about like the experience of like food going in our bodies. We need to talk about the experience of like contraction and like expansion. And we also need to talk about like, attraction. I always think it's interesting when people who are very like big often talk about how much they love themselves, but the people that they actually love and like want to find pleasure, explore pleasure with, are often like really small, quote unquote normal looking people. I don't know. I just think we got to be honest about like what we find pleasure in, the types of people we find pleasure in, and really like what I've been doing in my work recently is like, this is too much information, but I think sometimes we need to think about our dreams and what our fantasies look like. And when we're fantasizing, like are we in our fantasy? And or like, often when I think about my fantasies, I'm still like that nigga who everybody said was fine at like 29 years old. And like that's a form of lying to myself too. Do you know what I mean? And if we really want to push it, like I've been thinking about how in my fantasies often, like I neglect to age the women in my fantasy, but I can tell you in my fantasies, the women that I'm like, exploring shit with, they're not over 50. That's fucked up. I'm closer to 50 than 30, my nigga. Like, so I don't know. I just think we have to like be honest and work through not just what we do, but also what we fantasize about. And I think that's tied to that question, which is
somebody's saying you should join us next month as we're reading Pleasure Activism after we finish up All About Love.
I love that book. That's a crucial book.
And Bree also did that syllabus, so we'll have it done in the coming week or so. So
where is Bree in school at?
I told her to call in for this, but I don't think she understood my request. She's getting her PhD at University of Indiana, but she graduated from Davidson College here in North Carolina.
That's what's up. I went to IU too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
She's just started, so she's a little busy, but we would have loved for her to call in. All right, so the next question is, do you think there will ever be an evolution in Black male masculinity?
Yeah. I mean, I think we've seen. Yeah, yeah. I mean, will that evolution ultimately be kind to itself and to like femmes and black women? I mean, I hope so. But I mean, if you can't look at where we are and be like, there's been no evolution, you know, in black, like when I was in high school, there were no people who called themselves boys who were gay, who were out, right? I mean, but we knew that there were people who were queer, but they just couldn't talk about it or be it. And I'm not saying that is liberation, but it's an evolution. Like I have friends now who I went to high school with who can be in relationship, who can talk about fucking, you know what I mean? Like who they could never talk about that shit in the past. I think there's been an evolution. I don't think we're liberated at all, but I think there's been an evolution.
What are your thoughts on Black men and expressing vulnerability?
I mean, I think that's complicated, because I think there's this like common understanding that black men don't express vulnerability, but I I just am a word person, so I mean, I just think black men are constantly expressing vulnerability. I think expressing vulnerability and being kind and tender and graceful are different. But I know a lot of black men who love to be touched by other black men. I mean, like I got my favorite, my nigga Lathan, who's in this book. Every time I see him, I'm like, nigga, we just dapped up. Like we don't have to continually dap the whole time we talking to one another. But like he want to keep touching me. You know what I'm saying? And I want to keep touching him. But like, so I think that's vulnerability. But I think that's not tenderness. Like we're not talking about why we really want to touch one another. We're
But
just
isn't vulnerability word to Brene Brown, allowing yourself to be seen? So you might have like that moment of like intimacy and affection, but is it vulnerability? Because if you're, it's not expressed. It's not like, hey, like I'm happy to be in your presence, nigga. Like you here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is expressed. I always talk about this. If you're ever in a group of men and a group of cis heterosexual men and one of the men feels small, 90% of the time that nigga's gonna grab his dick and gonna find some reason to say the B word. Now, to me, that's vulnerable. It's to me that's a vulnerable man. Like that's a fucking like
that is. I think
so,
that's a misappropriation of the word.
I don't think it is, fam. Like I just don't think vulnerable is shrouded in like in this innocence. I think we see vulnerability in hypermasculinity. Hypermasculinity is vulnerability, but it's not with the other part. Like people aren't talking about why they feel so vulnerable that they have to put up this shield. And I'm trying to say, I think black men are mad fucking vulnerable, but I also just think we're afraid to use language to talk about how vulnerable we feel and we are. I understand what you're saying. I just don't buy this notion that we're not vulnerable. I think we fucking stay vulnerable. You can't walk around grabbing your dick and not be vulnerable. That like what you grabbing your dick for, nigga? Ain't nobody coming to fucking get your dick. Like that is the epitome of somebody thinking they're vulnerable. But let's talk about
people are saying that is an overcompensation. That's not vulnerability. It's an overcompensation. It's a narcissism. It's a lack of rooting. It's a lack of sense. It's still lying, right? It's like,
right.
I just read all about love, so all I'm gonna do is quote Bell Hooks, right?
I know, but see, I just don't think vulnerable. I feel you. I just don't think vulnerability is the end all. I see vulnerability for example, I just watched President Trump give a bullshit ass talk. That man, I saw so much vulnerability in him. But like, did he use words to talk about how vulnerable he is? Nah, I just don't think vulnerability is, for myself, I know I'm fucking vulnerable. Like but I think we got to use the language to talk about how we sometimes put up these masks. Like I don't think you can put up a mask and not be vulnerable. Like that's why you put up a mask, because you're vulnerable.
Yeah, as somebody in the Facebook comments is saying, they think what you're saying, what the examples you're giving are a reaction to vulnerability. They're a reaction to the uncomfortableness. So I think what I do here is that black men are very capable of being vulnerable. Like vulnerability exists within them, like a deep well of it. But the ways in which we respond to that feeling isn't to actually allow ourselves to be vulnerable. It's to express it in toxic ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
All right, so somebody is, we're looking for more advice from you, because as a cisgender Black man who has had fuckboy tendencies in his past, what suggestions do you have for Black men who are struggling to cultivate healthy relationships?
I mean, again, I don't think I try not to give people advice. I try to talk through things and things that I have a hard time with, and hope that people engage in that conversation with me. I think tenderness is so much more important than all of that other shit. I think attempting to use language to talk about why some of us have an aversion or a propensity to want to be tender or to not, like, that's what I'm trying to talk to my friends about and myself about. Like why is tenderness something we attempt to avoid, and when we show so obviously that we need and want it, then we try to, like, tighten up again.
See, because for me, I definitely dated someone who was very good at being tender, but was incapable of truly being vulnerable. He had the
Yeah.
tenderness part down. He knew that he needed tenderness. He needed attention. He needed this sort of like affront to kindness. But the vulnerability, the really allowing himself to be seen part.
But then that doesn't sound like he was being tender to you. I'm not getting in your business, but I just don't know how tender you can be and continue to deceive or what people call gaslight. I don't think you can be. I don't know. I don't know how tender you can be and do that to yourself or to somebody else. But maybe a lot of this shit is just like different. We just have different. We just using different words to say the same thing.
Different definitions. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I hear it. Like, but I think the performance of tenderness is just like the performance of vulnerability. It can be a performative shield. But like I think we have to talk about harm. I think we have to talk about joy. I think we have to have real hard conversations about pleasure, and we have to have really hard conversations about abuse. And that's what I try to do with, like, the young Black man that maybe talk to me or look up to me. And definitely, like, the older Black man too. It's definitely hard with them old niggas though. They don't want to hear. They don't want to participate in these kind of conversations at all.
All right. So this is my question. Bit of an echo happening. All right. So throughout the book, you discuss your journey into a Black feminist politic. But your last relationship with the woman in the book, Flora, ends with you telling her a lie that she does not forgive you for after attending a rally for Black women. So Black feminism teaches that the personal is political. Have you since been able to make a commitment? And do you have advice for Black men who falter in this area?
I love how everybody
That's
wants.
my question.
I love how y'all want me to give advice. I mean, but again, I think my advice would be to Black men similarly what I said. But what I think is interesting about with that question is, like, I think Black feminist men, Black feminist, genderqueer folk, Black feminist women, I think we have to talk about what a Black feminist praxis actually looks like.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the words. This is what I always say, like, knowing the language can make you a much more potent abuser of the person that you're trying to, like, in theory, like, communicate with in, like, some liberatory way. So I am definitely spending a lot of time thinking about how, like, the practice and the theory do not necessarily align in any Black feminist I know. And in most Black feminist men I know, I'm thinking about how, like, the understanding of the theory has allowed us to be more potent abusers of people. But the understanding of it has to manifest in, like, a change behavior. And again, I think that's like daily, hourly work. I don't think it's like a deliverance, like you get there and then you never fucked up again. I think you have to commit every day, every single day, to being a loving, tender person with a radical Black feminist politic, with the understanding that, like, that shit is fucking hard for Black feminists, not just Black men. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. There's a book called by Erinette White that I've read and I'm always quoting, because she talks about how Black men have come into their Black feminist praxis, and in the book she does like this, what is it, a qualitative study where she interviews a bunch of folks, and she kind of acknowledges that to be a Black, or to be even partnered with someone who identifies as a Black feminist, is hard work. It's very difficult. And that because it takes a constant renegotiation with yourself on a daily basis to commit to the praxis. And that's when I realized, like, if I'm going to commit to being a Black feminist, I can't be reaching for comforts, right? Like, I understand that I'm committing to a collective struggle, and that it's going to be a constant renegotiation with myself, a constant checking of myself and checking of my morals and my ethics to make sure that I'm really committed to this work. And it's not for the faint of heart.
It is so not for the faint of heart. But like in my I'm a professor, and one of the things that like I think a lot of Black feminist professors often say is that at these institutions, sometimes the people doing Black women the dirtiest happen to be sometimes like Black women who've been there forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like
Yep.
I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to ever say that publicly. But I feel like I can say that to you because I feel like you will push back or understand, or you will come at that with love. But what I'm saying is like there's certain things that we think or know to be true that we can't even say in a public space. And I'm not trying to be like, I'm just trying to say that I think Black feminism is always trying to push and pull because of that tension. You know what I mean? Like yeah. I mean this is where Bell Hooks' work is just like foundational. Like Bell Hooks understands that Black feminists fuck up Black feminists and Black men fuck up Black women, right? But like those ain't the same things, right? Like they just yeah.
Two different kinds of fucks up. But no, she does. I was reading, man, is it Black Looks in Media Representation? And she's talking about going into Black feminist spaces, and because her story isn't the same as their story, how we turn on each other. And even, Dr. Collins, we read Black Feminist Thought, and Dr. Collins sat down with us for like 2 whole hours. Right?
Wow.
And she talks about a lot about how like it is a commitment to a collective struggle, and we can cause harm to each other based on the privileges and the way we feed into this hierarchy of power and domination, and trying to, put each other down. So it is like, I think the foundation of Black feminist praxis and theory is that it's a collective struggle, and you are constantly renegotiating your role in that struggle.
Yeah, the constant renegotiating. That's the part, right? The constant renegotiating.
All right, so the last question I have for you is, what is your current relationship with your mother, and has it improved since the release of the book?
Yeah, it's definitely improved. But it's still hard. It's still my mom is really proud of me in that book because she's like a Black woman who like wanted her son to do well and all that kind of shit. But she's still shame, and that's the fucked up part. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to put that book out until I had worked through like all my resentment for her, and I think I did work through that shit, but like I underestimated how shame my mom would feel. So there's a film, Issa Rae got the option of book, so it's coming out. It's gonna be a movie, and my mom was
I had missed that news.
My mom was gonna talk to the director, to the screenwriter, and then she was like, "Nah, I'm not talking to them." I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, that book put me through hell. I don't want to talk to nobody." And so then I'm just like, this was a conversation that happened 2 days ago. So then I'm just like, okay, so I don't know what to say. Like I'm not gonna try to convince her to do something that she doesn't want to do. But at the same time, there's a part of me to feel some kind of way about her saying that, given a lot of where we've been together,
Oh man, so she gonna be mad when this movie come out.
She's not gonna be mad because we're not gonna let the film do her dirty. But I don't know. Shame is a monster, man. That's all. For me at least, and for my family, shame is a monster.
Well,
shame is a monster.
Hopefully, now that everyone's going to be walking into therapy, you can come out on the up and up. But that's a big. I mean that sincerely though. It's like you just dropped that casually, like Issa Rae optioned it. That's a big deal. Yeah, because we read Such a Fun Age, and we had Kylie Reed come in, and Lena Waithe optioned that book. So like a lot of our, and I'm excited. Didn't American Marriage get optioned? And then oh man, what's the
Friday Black? Friday Black is gonna be a TV show. Friday Black? I don't know if you know Friday Black.
No. What's the book by the lady about her house, like her family? They like 7 siblings.
Oh, The Yellow House?
Yes. Didn't that get optioned?
Sarah Broom is brilliant. Have you read that book yet?
I started it. For some reason I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, it's dense. It's textured, but it's so dope to me. Especially it's dope to me. But yeah. They trying to do, white folks out here trying to put their money behind shit, but we gonna see.
Is it Yellow Room that I'm talking about? Is that the book that I have? I know it's about like 7 siblings. Oh no, the Turner House. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, Turner House by Angela. Yeah.
Yes, I got halfway through it, but there's so many characters. I was like, I really gotta focus when I read this book,
Right.
and so I have not finished it.
That's a casino book too. I don't know if you ever read that part. They got some good scenes in there about casinos and black women.
You still going to the casino?
Nah, like I give my money away to people, but I don't give my money away to machines and casinos anymore. I'm too ashamed. I'm too embarrassed.
Yeah, somebody says they need American. I think American Marriage is becoming a movie that got optioned a while ago.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I don't know if you have any last things to say. Did we not cover something? I just want to say
thank you for pushing me. I feel more comfortable in this conversation than I felt in any other. But thank you, thank all of y'all for listening and giving that book any time. And I'm gonna think a lot more about what y'all saying about vulnerability, because I think you're right, and I need to work to understand that a little bit more. So thank you.
All right, thank y'all for joining. I hope y'all have fun watching this versus. We ended on time just for y'all, because usually we go over time. But we'll holla at y'all later.
Who you got though in the verses?
Brandy. Don't play no games with me. It's Brandy. Come on.
Mississippi. You know that, right?
Oh, that's right. They are from Mississippi. Her parents are.
No, we claim her. We don't claim.